Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. My name is Leanna Hahn and I will be your host and teacher for today. We are going to be looking at a really fun, super non-intimidating little flower painting, just a little field of flowers. So for those of you at home who have been watching and kind of thinking, okay, I don't know if I can do it, okay, this is one you can do. So we're going to throw one out that will get everybody involved, get you out and trying something that maybe you've never tried before. So as always, we start out with a run through of all of our inventory pieces. We are going to be using 3 paint brushes. We have a number 6 filbert, we have a number 12 filbert, a number 6 filbert, and a number 1 round. We are using our acrylic paints, and today we have a beautiful array, kind of earthy tones, which is kind of nice. So we're using some Nathal red, we have Venetian red, we have white, we have some olive green, we've got nice yellow ochre, we have some black. Again, this is acrylic paint, so very important. You're going to need to make sure that you have a cup of water. We'll be using that to wash off our paintbrushes. We have our rag here we'll be using to dab off our paintbrushes to make sure that we don't drip any water onto our canvas. And again, acrylic paint dries very quickly, which is awesome. That's why we're going to complete a painting in a very, very short time period. So when we look at our painting, we kind of step back and decide, where do we start? So we take a look and say, what's the background? What's the foreground? And where are we going to start first? And where are we going to go next? So typically in any painting, we're going to start on the background. So for us, it's a very swishy, very broad, very non-specific background of whites and yellow ochres. We've got some nice olives and whites and blacks kind of moved in here, kind of to make the impression of, oh, this is some greens, this is some nice tall grass here. And then we bring in the foreground, which is the flowers. So that's going to come in after the background. So to start off, we've got a blank canvas here. And this is a 16 by 20. It is a wraparound canvas. I'm going to go ahead and start with my very large number 12 filbert. Dab that in water. And we're just going to do a nice swishy background. So we're going to be grabbing a combination of our white and our yellow ochre. So I get a lot of people asking, should I be mixing the paints here on our paper plate or mixing them here on the canvas? And the answer is whichever you prefer. And it really depends on the painting itself. So let's go ahead and just get some placement here. Now this is going to be an exercise in blending. We do a lot of that. So we'll go ahead, place our paint on the canvas, and I kind of decide what to add to the canvas once I've already started getting some motion here. I'm going to put more of the ochre down here towards the bottom. It looks like I got a little blue somehow reactivating there, so no problem. We'll just kind of go over it. But we've got more of our whites towards the top. And I do this because I want to show a little bit of dimension. So I want to show that the light is kind of coming from the sky. So there's a difference between the top and the bottom, more depth towards the bottom, and more light towards the top. Now, another key is don't overwork your canvas. So depends on what kind of look you're looking for. So I like to have a little bit of that swishy, streaky feel. You see, that's right there what you're getting. And you achieve that when you're introducing 2 colors together and they're wet and you're blending them together. Now, if you keep blending, look what you're going to get. If you keep adding them together, you are going to achieve just a new color. So the answer is, it depends on what you're going for. If you want some variation, if you want some distinction, then you need to know when to stop. And that's kind of a hard question to answer. When do I stop? When do I know that I've got enough on the canvas? So if you're looking for a streaky feel, just a couple streaks. Don't overwork your paint because you're going to just end up with one new neutral color on the canvas. If you want that nice, streaky, very distinct difference in your colors, then don't put a lot of work into it. let your canvas sit and then move on. Place the color on there and just exactly do that. Place the color on there, couple streaks in there, and then move on. So make sure that when you are doing your blending, your first efforts may be to get the paint on the canvas, but let's kind of go back while that paint is wet and take your paintbrush and make nice smooth strokes and make sure you are erasing your stops and starts. So we don't want to see the stops and starts. So I don't want to see you moving and leaving the tops and bottoms of the brush strokes on your canvas. Make sure you are erasing those. And you can do that once you've completed where all of your color is. Once you got that nice effect that you want and you're happy with it, and make sure you erase. Now if you're conscious of that, then make sure you're continuing with those strokes as you're going through and making them go continuously up and down. See, I've got to stop right here. So I'm going to go all the way up and just kind of erase that. See, I'm running out of a little white, so we'll go ahead and add a little bit more, and then we're going to continue on. Now, down here on our original, we started to introduce a little bit of that cool olive green. So I'm going to start bringing this in. And again, kind of mixing it in with some of the white and just a dab of the black. Now black goes a long way, so we don't want to add a lot. Just kind of bringing it in here and there. Not a whole heck of a lot. And then keep in mind, the idea here is that we've got some nice movement of perhaps some grasses, and we get that by just really pushing upwards while that paint is wet and letting it run right off the canvas. So I'm pushing harder with the bottom of my paintbrush as I'm towards the bottom of the canvas, and as I get towards the top, I kind of flick off and I let those nice lines just complete up. There you go. Now if you put black on here and you feel like it's too dark, no problem. Immediately grab some green, go right over it while it's wet. If it's too dark, add some white. So what's so cool about this is it really is a nice combination of your personal preference. If you're finding that your canvas is a little too dry, just go ahead and add some more paint. Because remember, we started over here, this is going to dry very quickly. And I'm kind of tapering down, so I've made my greens a little bit higher over on this side versus the start of the canvas, kind of going from left to right. Again, if you have any of that dimpling showing through, that's kind of your canvas telling you, hey, you need some more paint. So go grab some paint, add some more. All right. So about now you should be getting to a point where you're starting to feel, all right, I like it. I got enough on there. Kind of looks like there's something going on. Kind of the background of some field of flowers. Not too bad. Alrighty. And make sure you step back. This is very key, very important. When you are so close on top of your painting, your eye cannot adjust. It only sees a very small portion of it. So remember to take a step back. Look at your painting, decide what you like. Take this opportunity to make any corrections before you go on. So let's go ahead, drop that big paintbrush in, and now we're going to work on our flowers that were on the front. We're going to move into our medium paintbrush. Let's grab some water, kind of dab that off. And I'm going to be using a combination of our Nathal red and our Venetian red. So we're just kind of mixing the two together. We're just kind of getting an almost kind of like a, I'm going to call it like a red mud, almost a brick kind of color. And these flowers are really, really ambiguous. They're very obscure. So we're just going to kind of put some very vague. And again, these are just fields of flowers. So we're going to make sure that some of them are higher than others. We don't want to have a row of flowers exactly the same size. So, because guess what? They all don't grow the exact same height. You may have a lot of them that are very similar in height, but they all don't grow the exact same height. They're going to be all over. So I'm kind of using the side of my brush, working between the two colors. I'm making kind of what I call my flower blobs. They're not anything fancy, they're just kind of flower blobs. You know, and that's another thing too to keep in mind. Your eye will finish the painting. You don't have to make every single line, every single portion of the flower. Let your eye do some of the work, and your hand do some of it as well. All right, so I think we got enough of the red ones on here. Let's go ahead and add in some yellow ochre. I'm going to pick up some of those cool yellow ochre flowers. So just going to have some variation. And let's kind of make sure that we place those yellow ochre flowers on top of the green, because they're really not going to show up too much over here. So just for contrast, make sure that we're placing them over the greens. Again, using the side of my brush, just a very quick swirl. And if I'm picking up a little bit of the background in there, that's actually kind of nice. This is one painting where I kind of chose, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and proceed on while the background is still wet, just because I like how it looks when it activates and swirls in some of that background into the paint. Now here's another thing too. Some of your flowers are going to be closer to each other than others. Don't make them all perfectly spaced out. Have some that are much closer than others. That's a little bit more reminiscent of really what's happening in nature. Alrighty. So now at this point, let's go ahead, wash off that brush, and we're going to bring in a little bit of highlight. So let's grab some of that white. Let's go right on top of those cool yellow flowers. Let's bring in some highlight. Remember, keep in mind, we want to place that light where we believe the light will be falling. So if the light's coming from top here, we don't want to place the light underneath. That's where the shadow is going to fall. So let's just put a few nudges. Not too many. Just a few to say, hey, there's a difference. All right, and then we're actually going to do the same thing with those red flowers. I'm going to grab a little bit of that white, just kind of mix it in just a hair with the Venetian red. Kind of making a nice highlight mixture of the two. More of a muted Venetian red. Now let's take that in and just add it to a few of the petals. We've already got a little bit of that going on. There you go. Again, it doesn't have to be all over all of them, just in a few spots. Okie doke. So now what we're going to do here is we're actually going to finish up the outline of our flowers. And we're going to do that with our very small brush. Let's go ahead, open that up, dip that into the water. And we're going to do that with our black. So again, this is the #1 round, and what you'll want to do is dip it into your black, kind of swirl it around a little bit. And we're going to make the outline of these flowers, and the outline is not going to be exactly all around every little petal of the flower. It's just going to be very vague and around part of them, but not all of them. So we're going to come in and say, all right, here is part of the flower, but not all of it. I am going a little heavy with the black because, again, I want you to be able to see it. But you'll notice here, I'm not touching every corner, every petal, just kind of getting a general placement. And then we do the same thing with the white, but not too much. With the yellow ochre, rather. Just kind of getting some alrighty. So now with that same, we can actually, we'll go ahead and stay in that black. And let's make some stems here. So the stems are not going to be straight lines because flowers generally have a little bit of a bow into them. So let's go ahead and bring those stems down. Now again, I'm not freaking out about where every stem is. I'm not making sure that the top is exactly attached to the flower or the bottom is exactly hitting the ground. This is very loose painting and it's intended to be that way. After you wash off that paintbrush, let's go ahead, grab a little bit of the white, and we're just going to go on top of some of those stems. And we're doing it generally either on top or kind of to the left to coincide with where the light would fall. Again, just to give it a little bit of dimension. There you go. All right. And then last but not least, we're going to work on the center of those flowers. So let's go ahead, wash it off a little bit, get some fresh white. And we're going to go kind of heavy with this because remember, our paint on our palette here is, or on our canvas rather, is pretty wet. So let's go ahead and just put some blobs for centers. And as a matter of fact, let's kind of stay within the color palette. So we'll do all the yellows first. Let's wash it off because we don't want to, I just realized I drag a little bit of the red into the yellow one, so then let's go back and do all the reds. There we go. Okay. And then the very last step, let's do the same thing with the black. And we're just going to add a little bit of a dot. So not too much, just kind of a center. Again, kind of do that heavy. So this is kind of a painting that you may need to sit and let dry for a while because we've got a lot of different textures going on here. Last but not least, same thing, right into the yellow. You'll notice my dots in the center are very obscure, not very specific. They're kind of a blob because they're really kind of going with the structure of this painting, which is extremely loose, kind of blobby, very blobby, and then lots of fun. If you want to add a few little leaves coming down over here, that's kind of cool. Kind of neat. There you go. All right, so we've got a field of flowers here. Lots of fun. Hopefully you have picked up some techniques. Hopefully you have gained a little courage to try something like this at home. If you'd like to learn more information about painting one of these paintings, do send us an email to info@picassosgrapevine.com. Thank you for joining us.